Ladies and gentlemen, I am Joyce Meyer, and I want you to enjoy your life and become who God created you to be. If you truly want a positive change in your life, don't just listen, take action. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you can receive more inspiring messages. Let me start with a little story. I remember meeting a woman at church who was always calm, composed, and so unreadable. Not in a cold way, but in a powerful way. You didn't know her every thought, but you knew she was full of wisdom. You couldn't predict her every move, but you respected her presence. I once asked her, "How do you stay so still in a noisy world?" She smiled and said, "I don't share everything that's going on inside of me. I learned to let God be my voice more than my own words." That's when I realized mystery isn't about hiding, it's about managing your presence with purpose. See, we live in a world where everybody is oversharing. You post your mood, your meal, your moves every minute. But sometimes God calls us to walk in quiet confidence. Proverbs 17:27 says, "A man of knowledge uses words with restraint, and a man of understanding is even tempered." So today I want to talk to you about how to become a mysterious person. Not in a sneaky or manipulative way, but in a way that holds power, poise, and peace. There is a distinct kind of power in silence, one that many people overlook in a world that constantly demands noise, validation, and attention. Mastering the art of silence doesn't mean becoming passive or invisible. It means becoming purposeful in your presence and intentional with your words. Silence, when embraced with wisdom, becomes a tool for strength, clarity, and self-control. It helps you navigate life with discernment instead of reacting impulsively to every situation. When you learn to be silent, you begin to hear things others miss. You hear the undertones of a conversation, the emotions behind the words, the intentions hidden in plain sight. Silence allows you to pause before you speak, to reflect before you act, and to remain composed in environments where chaos is the norm. People who have mastered silence don't just speak less, they listen more, and that listening gives them insight. Their words carry weight because they don't waste them. Jesus himself modeled this power. He didn't always respond to critics. He didn't defend himself in every moment. There were times when he remained silent, not out of weakness, but out of strength. That silence was louder than any speech. He spoke of his confidence in God, his understanding of timing, and his awareness of his mission. In a moment where everyone expected him to lash out or explain, he chose silence, and that silence changed history. In our everyday lives, silence is an act of self-discipline. When someone offends you and you choose not to retaliate, you are operating in the power of silence. When the room is filled with gossip and you decide not to participate, you are protecting your integrity through silence. When everyone is rushing to speak their opinions and you hold back to process your thoughts or pray, you are showing maturity. That's not silence as in holding your breath. It's silence as a sign of control and depth. There's also a spiritual side to silence. In quiet moments, we connect more clearly with God. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." In silence, revelation comes, peace flows, direction becomes clear. The more we learn to quiet the noise around us and within us, the more we begin to walk in step with God's plan. Silence clears the clutter that often blocks wisdom from taking root. Being silent doesn't mean being disconnected or uncaring. It means you are not driven by the need to always be heard. It means you are not giving away your peace just to prove a point. A mysterious person often uses silence as their strategy, not to hide, but to lead differently. Their restraint commands respect. And over time, people begin to realize that those who speak the least often have the most to say when the time is right. There is wisdom in being open, but there is power in being selective. Not everyone needs to know everything about you. In a world that constantly pushes us to share every detail of our lives, from what we're eating to what we're feeling, choosing to hold some things close is a rare strength. Being mysterious doesn't mean being dishonest or secretive. It means having discernment about what you share, when you share it, and with whom. People often equate transparency with authenticity, but true authenticity isn't about revealing everything. It's about being real without being reckless. You can be genuine without giving people a backstage pass to your soul. When you tell everyone everything, you leave no room for people to wonder, to reflect, or to respect your boundaries. People tend to value what they have to earn. If you give all of yourself away too freely, they may come to take it for granted. Even Jesus, though he walked in truth and love, didn't reveal everything to everyone. He spoke in parables, shared deeper revelations with his disciples, and often withdrew from the crowds. He knew that not every heart was ready for every truth. That's discernment. There's a time to speak and a time to stay silent, a time to reveal and a time to conceal. Ecclesiastes 3:7 reminds us that there is a time to be silent and a time to speak. It's not about hiding who you are. It's about protecting the value of who you are. When you keep some of your dreams, struggles, or victories between you and God, you create space for growth and for intimacy with Him. You don't owe everyone an explanation for your every move. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let your actions speak louder than your words. People will notice your growth, your peace, your confidence, and they won't always know where it came from. That's part of the mystery, and that mystery draws people in more than constant self-disclosure ever could. There's also protection in not being an open book. When you share too much too soon, you invite opinions and energy that may not be in alignment with your purpose. Some people don't celebrate you, they just collect information. And that information in the wrong hands can become a weapon of distraction or discouragement. Guard your heart, guard your journey, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Keeping some things private doesn't make you distant, it makes you intentional. The people meant to walk closely with you will earn your trust over time, and even then you'll learn that some things are best kept between you and the one who created you. There's beauty in quiet growth, strength in silence, and dignity in being a little less predictable. You are not required to be a constant story. You're allowed to be a layered one. Controlling your emotions publicly is one of the most powerful marks of maturity and inner strength. It doesn't mean you ignore or suppress your feelings, but rather that you learn to steward them wisely, especially in front of others. Emotions are natural and necessary. They are part of how God designed us. But they are not supposed to be the drivers of our decisions, especially when others are watching. Being mysterious often starts with how you carry yourself in moments of pressure, conflict, or celebration. People may not remember everything you said, but they will remember how you made them feel and how you carried yourself when emotions were high. Jesus was a master of emotional discipline. He felt deeply. He wept, he rejoiced, he got angry, but he never let his emotions lead him into sin or cause him to misrepresent his purpose. Even when he was being falsely accused and unfairly judged, he remained silent. That silence wasn't weakness, it was power under control. He knew when to speak and when to be still. That kind of emotional intelligence is what sets apart a person who is led by God from someone who is led by the moment. In today's culture, emotional outbursts are often celebrated. Social media rewards people for being raw and unfiltered, but sometimes that rawness is just undisciplined behavior in disguise. Being mysterious doesn't mean being emotionless. It means having such a strong inner foundation that your peace is not easily shaken, your joy is not easily stolen, and your words are not easily provoked. People are drawn to individuals who carry peace in storms and calm in conflict. That kind of presence stands out in a world that thrives on drama. There is a time to share your emotions, and there are safe spaces and trusted people for that. But mastering the discipline of when and how to share makes all the difference. Proverbs 29:11 says, "Fools give full vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end." A mysterious person doesn't allow every emotion to be displayed like a billboard. They allow God to filter their responses through grace, wisdom, and timing. When you carry yourself with calm strength, even in the face of adversity, people take notice. They may not know what you're thinking, but they'll sense your confidence. They may not see your struggle, but they'll feel your stability. And that kind of emotional control becomes not just admirable, but magnetic. Protecting your energy is essential if you want to live with purpose, clarity, and peace in a world that constantly pulls at your attention, your emotions, and your time. Guarding your internal space is not a luxury, it's a necessity. When you don't protect your energy, you become drained, distracted, and discouraged without even realizing how you got there. Every conversation, environment, and relationship either adds to you or takes from you. That's why it's so important to become intentional about where you go, who you spend time with, and what you allow into your spirit. People who are mysterious and powerful often carry a quiet strength. Part of that strength comes from knowing when to say yes and when to say no. They don't show up to every argument and respond to every invitation or engage in every conversation, not because they think they're better than others, but because they understand the value of their time and emotional well-being. They know that their peace is too precious to be compromised by chaos, gossip, or negativity. Just because someone wants your attention doesn't mean they deserve your energy. Jesus was always surrounded by crowds, but he was never controlled by them. He healed many, taught often, and moved with compassion, but he also withdrew regularly to pray and recharge. He didn't allow the demands of the crowd to deplete his connection to the Father. That's a lesson we all need. You can love people deeply without giving everyone unlimited access to your life. Setting boundaries is not selfish, it's sacred. It creates space for you to rest, to hear from God, and to stay focused on your assignment. Sometimes the people and things that drain you the most are the ones you feel most obligated to. But if something is constantly pulling you away from peace, you have to pause and reevaluate. You weren't created to carry everyone's expectations. You weren't designed to be available to everyone at all times. Even God himself rested. If he modeled the rhythm of work and rest, why do we feel guilty for needing the same? Protecting your energy also means being careful about what you consume, the music you listen to, the content you scroll through, the voices you entertain. All of it affects your spirit. If you constantly feed yourself fear, comparison, or distraction, don't be surprised when you feel overwhelmed or insecure. What you allow in your space becomes the atmosphere you live in. Choose environments and influences that lift you higher, not ones that weigh you down. Having depth in private is one of the most powerful and underrated qualities a person can possess. It means that your strength, wisdom, and character are not dependent on outside validation or public applause. In a world where everyone is trying to be seen, heard, and celebrated, there is something profoundly beautiful about growing in silence. A mysterious person doesn't need to announce every victory, explain every decision, or broadcast every moment of growth. Their depth is not for display, it's for stability. When you develop yourself in private, you build a strong foundation that can support your life in public. It's easy to perform when people are watching, but what do you do when no one is clapping? Do you still pray when no one is around? Do you still pursue excellence when there's no audience? Do you still serve with humility when there's no recognition? These are the questions that reveal real depth, because true character is who you are when no one's looking. Jesus spent 30 years in private before 3 years of public ministry. Think about that. 30 years of learning, growing, praying, and walking in obedience before ever stepping onto a platform. That's depth. He didn't rush into visibility. He waited until the time was right. And even then, he often pulled away from crowds to reconnect with the Father. He knew that what happened in the secret place was more important than the spotlight. That same principle applies to us. Our private disciplines shape our public impact. Spending time alone with God, reading, learning, reflecting, these things aren't glamorous, but they are powerful. When you cultivate a rich inner life, you become unshakable. Storms don't scare you, opinions don't sway you, and failure doesn't define you. Why? Because your roots go deep. You're not just surface level successful, you're grounded. You've done the work in silence, and that gives you quiet confidence in every season. People with depth don't need to prove themselves. Their wisdom speaks through their choices. Their peace is evident in their presence. And their power doesn't come from their platform, it comes from their preparation. When you commit to growing in private, you become the kind of person who surprises people. They may not expect much because you're not flashy, but when you move, things shift. That's the power of hidden preparation. In private, you also become more aware of God's voice. Without all the noise of the world, you can hear his direction clearly. You get refined in your thinking, purified in your intentions, and strengthened in your spirit. That kind of transformation doesn't happen in public. It happens behind the scenes. And when the time comes for you to step forward, you'll be ready, not because you practiced performing, but because you committed to becoming. So while the world rushes to be seen, choose instead to be deep. Let your strength come from silence, your wisdom from solitude, and your power from prayer. Because what you build in private, God will use in ways you never imagined. Letting God be your defender is one of the hardest yet most freeing things you can ever learn to do. As human beings, our natural instinct is to speak up when we're misunderstood, fight back when we're wronged, and prove ourselves when we're doubted. But there comes a point in your spiritual maturity when you realize that not every battle is yours to fight. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay silent, step back, and trust that God sees what others cannot, and that he will handle what you cannot control. It takes strength to walk away from an argument you could easily win. It takes courage to stay calm when your character is being questioned. It takes humility to not explain yourself when you know the truth. But it takes faith, real, deep, tested faith, to let God defend you when everything in you wants to take matters into your own hands. Letting God be your defender doesn't mean you're weak or passive. It means you are rooted enough in your identity that you don't need validation from others to feel secure. The Bible is filled with examples of people who chose to let God fight for them. One of the most powerful is in Exodus 14:14, where God tells the Israelites, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Imagine standing at the edge of the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army behind you and nowhere to go, and being told to be still. That kind of stillness isn't passive, it's active trust. It's saying, "God, I don't see the way out, but I trust you to make one." Jesus himself modeled this better than anyone. When he was arrested, falsely accused, mocked, and beaten, he did not defend himself. He didn't plead his case or try to justify his actions. He remained silent, even though he was fully innocent. That silence wasn't weakness, it was divine confidence. He knew who he was, and he knew that God's plan would prevail even if it didn't look like victory in the moment. When you let God be your defender, you remove yourself from the exhausting cycle of needing to be right. You free your heart from bitterness and revenge. You give yourself space to grow, to heal, and to focus on your purpose instead of your pain. And you allow God to do what only he can do: vindicate, restore, and elevate in his perfect timing. People may judge you without knowing your story. They may gossip, criticize, and assume things that aren't true, but none of that can stop what God has planned for you. In fact, the quieter you stay, the louder God moves. He will speak for you through your growth, your peace, your fruit, and your endurance. Over time, the people who doubted you will see that it was never about your words, it was about your walk. So trust him, stay in position, and let your life be your response